Picture an 82-year-old man lifting a 100-pound feed bag over his shoulder without flinching. No gym membership, no protein shake, no doctor's prescription. Just a Tuesday morning on an Amish farm in Lancaster County. A physical therapist from Philadelphia once drove out to document aging patterns in old-order Amish communities. She expected to find the same thing she saw every day in her clinic: frail bones, muscle loss, stooped postures, the slow crumbling that most people accept as inevitable after 60. Instead, she found men and women in their 70s doing physical work that would hospitalize most 40-year-olds. She drove home in silence. She said later that everything she'd been taught about aging felt incomplete. That story isn't an anomaly. It keeps happening. Researchers, doctors, and fitness experts keep visiting these communities expecting to study decline and walking away questioning everything they thought they knew. So today we're going to pull apart exactly what's happening, because the Amish aren't doing anything magical. They're not genetically superior. They're just doing something almost everyone else stopped doing, and the science behind it is so straightforward it's almost embarrassing. Here's the thing your doctor probably hasn't told you directly. After the age of 60, the average person loses between 1 and 2% of their muscle mass every single year. That number sounds small until you do the math. By 75, you could have lost 20 to 30% of the muscle you had in your prime. And it's not just about looking less toned. Muscle is the organ of longevity. It regulates your blood sugar, protects your joints, keeps you upright when you lose your balance, and is one of the strongest predictors of how long you'll live and how well you'll function doing it. The fitness industry saw this problem and responded the way it always does, with products. Protein powders formulated for seniors, creatine capsules, testosterone boosters, collagen drinks, a billion-dollar market built around the idea that aging muscle is a deficiency problem, something you fix by adding things. But the Amish don't buy any of it, and somehow they're winning. A 2024 study out of the University of Tennessee that looked specifically at old-order Amish men over 65 found grip strength, walking speed, and functional mobility scores that outperformed urban Americans in their mid-40s. Not slightly, significantly. The researchers were careful with their language in the published paper, but one of them said off the record, "We kept rechecking the data because it looked like an error." So what's actually going on? The first thing you need to understand is that the Amish don't exercise. Not in the way you're thinking. There are no sets and reps, no progressive overload programs, no periodization. They would find the concept of going to a building to lift things and then put them back down genuinely baffling. What they have instead is something humans had for 99% of their history and largely abandoned in the last 100 years. A life that requires their body to work every single day without exception. A 70-year-old Amish farmer wakes before sunrise. He walks to the barn. He lifts, carries, bends, pushes, and pulls for several hours before breakfast. Not as a workout, as a morning. Then he does it again in the afternoon, and again in the evening. On a conservative estimate, researchers using accelerometers found that old-order Amish men average over 18,000 steps a day. Active Amish men in their 70s were clocking closer to 22,000. The average American adult gets under 5,000. But here's what's even more interesting than the step count. It's the type of movement. Modern exercise science has spent decades obsessing over intensity. Go harder, lift heavier, push further. But the Amish model is built on something entirely different. Consistency of varied functional loads spread across the entire day. Carrying milk pails uses different muscles than swinging a hammer. Climbing a hayloft uses different stabilizers than pushing a plow. The body never fully adapts to a single pattern, which means it never stops being challenged. Dr. James O'Keefe, a cardiologist who has spent years studying what he calls the sweet spot of physical activity for longevity, points to moderate continuous movement, not intense gym sessions, as the most powerful signal for muscle preservation and cardiovascular health in older adults. He said publicly that if he could prescribe one thing to every patient over 60, it wouldn't be a drug. It would be a job that required them to move their body all day. The Amish have been doing that for 3 centuries without needing a cardiologist to tell them it was a good idea. Now let's talk about food, because this is where most people expect a complicated answer, and the Amish accidentally deliver the simplest one possible. A nutritionist from Toronto once spent 2 weeks living with an Amish family in Ohio as part of a research project. She came in with her macronutrient tracking apps and her understanding of optimal protein timing. She left 2 weeks later having eaten raw whole milk, home-cured pork, garden vegetables, and dense rye bread, and having lost 4 pounds while feeling stronger than she had in years. She wrote in her notes, "I came here to study them. I think they accidentally studied me." The Amish diet is not optimized in any modern sense. Nobody is counting leucine thresholds or timing casein protein before bed. But it accidentally hits several things that sports science has identified as critical for muscle synthesis in older adults. The protein is complete and highly bioavailable. Eggs from chickens they raise, pork from hogs they butcher, raw dairy from cows they milk every morning. Older adults have what researchers call anabolic resistance, meaning the body becomes less efficient at using protein to build muscle. The way to overcome that isn't necessarily more protein. It's higher quality protein consumed consistently across multiple meals. The Amish eat 3 large protein-containing meals a day without thinking about it as a strategy. The fat profile matters too. Raw whole milk and pastured pork contain fat-soluble vitamins, particularly vitamin D and vitamin K2, that are almost entirely absent from the modern Western diet. Vitamin D deficiency is epidemic in older adults and is directly linked to accelerated muscle loss. Amish farmers spending full days outdoors and consuming fat from animals raised in sunlight are getting vitamin D through 2 channels simultaneously. Many urban seniors are getting it through neither. And then there's the thing that surprises people most. The Amish don't snack. They eat meals. Big, real meals. Then they stop. This pattern naturally creates something that looks a lot like time-restricted eating, which a growing body of research suggests helps regulate insulin sensitivity and growth hormone production, both of which decline with age and both of which are directly tied to the body's ability to build and retain muscle. Speaking of growth hormone, here is a sentence that should make you uncomfortable. Human growth hormone, the primary hormonal signal your body uses to repair and build muscle, is almost entirely released during deep sleep, not during your workout, not during your protein shake, during sleep. And it is released in pulses, primarily in the first few hours after you fall asleep, most powerfully when you go to bed early and wake naturally with the light. The Amish go to bed when it gets dark. Not as a wellness hack, not because they read a book about circadian rhythms. Because they have no artificial lighting compelling them to stay awake, no screens hijacking their melatonin production, and because their bodies are genuinely exhausted from a day of real physical labor. Most Amish households are asleep by 9 or 10 in the evening and awake before 5 in the morning. That's 7 to 8 hours of sleep anchored to the natural light cycle, which sleep researchers have increasingly identified as the highest quality sleep architecture a human body can achieve. An 80-year-old Amish man is getting more anabolic hormone release every single night than a 45-year-old executive who falls asleep at midnight with a phone in his hand. That is not a small thing. That is a biological advantage that no supplement can fully replicate. Then there's the stress variable, and this one almost nobody talks about. Cortisol is the stress hormone that, when chronically elevated, directly destroys muscle tissue. It's catabolic. It breaks things down. And chronic psychological stress, the kind that comes from financial anxiety, digital overload, social comparison, professional pressure, and the relentless cognitive noise of modern life, keeps cortisol elevated in a low-grade, persistent way that silently eats through muscle mass year after year. A researcher studying Amish longevity once asked an elderly woman, she was 78 at the time, still gardening 2 hours a day, what she worried about. The woman thought about it for a long moment and said, "Whether the rain will come before I finish planting." That was it. Whether the rain would come. The Amish relationship with stress is structurally different. Their concerns are real but bounded. The harvest, the weather, a sick animal. These are stressors with a beginning and an end, things you can physically act on. Modern stress is often abstract and unresolvable, a news cycle that never ends, a financial system you can't control, a social media feed manufacturing outrage on demand. The body doesn't distinguish between types of stress, it just sees cortisol. And the Amish body, at 75, reflects decades of stress that mostly resolved instead of accumulated. The last piece is the one people resist most, and it might be the most powerful of all. Loneliness and social isolation are not just emotional problems, they are physiological ones. A landmark analysis published in PLOS Medicine found that social isolation increases mortality risk by 26%, roughly equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And newer research specifically links social isolation to accelerated muscle loss in older adults, partly through elevated cortisol, partly through reduced motivation to move, and partly through neurological pathways that aren't fully understood yet. Amish communities are built around physical togetherness. A barn raising isn't a social event with some construction attached. It's a construction event that is inherently social. When an older community member needs help harvesting, the community shows up. When someone's home needs repair, neighbors arrive with tools. The elderly are not removed from productive communal life. They remain embedded in it. An 80-year-old Amish man is still needed, still expected, still physically present and contributing. That expectation, researchers believe, is itself a powerful signal that keeps the body from sliding into the metabolic downregulation that accompanies perceived uselessness. A gerontologist from Johns Hopkins said something remarkable after spending time in these communities. She said, "In most of the world, we treat the elderly like a problem to be managed. In these communities, they're treated like a resource to be used, and their bodies respond accordingly. So what do you actually do with all of this? You don't need to move to Lancaster County. You don't need to give up electricity or buy a horse. But you do need to be honest about what the Amish are actually demonstrating, because it's not complicated. It's just inconvenient. Daily functional movement beats 3 gym sessions a week. Not because the gym is bad, but because consistency across 7 days crushes intensity across 3. Carry things. Walk with weight. Garden. Build something. Do it every day and stop waiting for a dedicated workout window to be the thing that saves you. Eat real, complete protein at every meal. Eggs, meat, fish, dairy, not as a diet strategy, but as a baseline. Stop chasing supplements that promise to solve a problem your food should already be handling. Sleep earlier and protect that sleep like it's medicine, because for muscle, it literally is. Reduce the chronic, unresolvable stress in your life, not through apps or meditation alone, but by spending more time doing physical things that have a beginning and an end. And find a community, a role, a purpose that requires your physical presence and keeps other people expecting something from you. The body produces what the life demands. When the life demands nothing, the body eventually stops offering. The city doctor who visited that Amish community looking for his blood pressure patients didn't walk away thinking they'd discovered a secret. He walked away realizing that modern life had manufactured conditions that make decline feel inevitable when it isn't. The Amish aren't resisting aging. They're just not accelerating it. At 70, 75, 80, the question isn't whether you can still build muscle. The research is unambiguous that you can. The question is whether your daily life is sending the right signals. The supplement industry wants you to believe the answer is in a bottle. The Amish have been proving otherwise for 300 years. They just never thought to market it.